Coach Ouaddou was to try and force Sipho Mbule into the team, how does he make that happen? Who does he take out? And what do these current Pirates players, Nemtajela, Nduli, whoever's playing in that midfield, Mbata, what do they offer Orlando Pirates that Sipho Mbule can't? Welcome to SoccerBeat. I'm joined by Cheezboy Mokoena. This is Talking Pirates, and of course the roles are kind of reversed, or not even reversed because I've never been on a Talking Pirates show. But I'm going to be asking Cheese a few questions. I'm going to put him on the spot. I've got an interesting talking point today, I think. And Cheese, of course, Orlando Pirates are in a very good position. 6 wins out of their last 7 league games. They are 3 points behind Sundowns with 2 games in hand. So, of course, if they win those games in hand, they'll go above Sundowns. So they're in a great spot. However, I do feel like there is something strange about Sipho Mbule not starting games for Pirates in the league. He has started games for Pirates elsewhere, but he is not starting games for Pirates in the league. And I believe that isn't necessarily a problem, but it's a massive talking point. This was someone who Abdeslam Ouaddou at the start of the season said was one of the best players in South Africa. So why Cheese is one of the best players in South Africa not starting for Orlando Pirates as they try and push for the title this season? So I want to put that to you, Cheese. Do you agree with me when I say that I don't think Sipho Mbule is getting a fair run at Orlando Pirates?
Yeah, well, I'd say to a certain point, I think everyone would also be asking themselves the same question in terms of, already about 10 games to 9 games through the season. They've probably played about 14 to 15 games already with cup competitions and stuff. I think with Sipho, it's a case of when we waited for him to try and get his match fitness, we saw it in Bafana where he played the full 90 and everybody thought, well, Sipho is ready to actually start games for Pirates, But I also see that the coach has got a way of using Sipho, when he brings him on in the second half. He hardly starts, a lot of games. He prefers a Tito that's playing in the 10 position. But for me, I feel like Sipho should be starting the games. I think he should be ready and starting. Maybe there are other factors behind the scenes that we are not aware of, that's really not giving the coach confidence to actually start him the game. But yeah, man, I think it will be a setback for him as well, with the World Cup and AFCON coming up. With him not getting enough game time as well. It limits him a bit, So probably he has to work more harder at training because sometimes you don't see what's happening in training. Maybe training is not the player that the coach wants, but obviously there's players like that, they do well during the official games. And then at training, they're a bit sloppy, they don't do things, and the coach probably has different ideas in terms of, okay, he looks like he's not ready to start the games, But for me personally, I believe he should be starting. He should be starting games for Pirates because he's a very key player. I mean, we all know what the Master Chef can do, So it will be interesting to see with the upcoming games, to see whether the coach will start him in certain games. And also, it depends on the tactics on the day of the match as well, That's why
Of
you
course,
find that,
but
yeah.
Cheese, I hear you on that. But we see a Sipho Mbule for Bafana Bafana that we
Mm.
don't see at Pirates. There's a massive contrast between his status at Pirates and his status in the Bafana team. I mean, he's playing so well for Bafana Bafana right now. You could argue that I know this is a bold statement, but right now, Bafana Bafana don't look to be missing Timbuzwane as much as they would had they not replaced him with that kind of a number 10. So my point is, if Sipho Mbule can play that well for Bafana Bafana on the biggest stage, I mean, he'll definitely go to AFCON. Cheese. He could well go to the World Cup, of course, if he keeps up that kind of form for Hugo Bruce. Why can't we see that Sipho Mbule for Pirates? Is it about where he is playing in the midfield? Because, of course, he's not playing at 10 for Pirates. He's played there a couple times this season, but it's not consistent. So how do you think if Coach Ouaddou was to try and force Sipho Mbule into the team, how does he make that happen? Who does he take out? And what do these current Pirates players, Nemtajela, Nduli, whoever's playing in that midfield, Mbata, what do they offer Orlando Pirates that Sipho Mbule can't? I'm just interrupting this video that I'm doing with Cheese to ask you guys to please subscribe to our channel. Between 60 and 70% of you guys have not subscribed, and we will forgive you if you go and do that right now. If you can like this video, we'd really appreciate it. It really pushes it out into YouTube's algorithm and shows more people. And even if you disagree with us, even if you disagree with our talking point, or if you don't like something I said, that's okay. We just want to make South African football the most talked about football in this country. So please like the channel, please subscribe, tell your friends about us, interact with us. and join us on this journey, because we are almost at 80,000 and we want to get to 100,000 by the end of the year. Thank you very much.
It still boils down to the point of the role, because in the Bafana, the coach prefers a different system, and Pirates is using a different system as well. And you find it a lot at Pirates, where he's got Nduli playing in that midfield, and you got a Tito that's playing in that midfield, and now we're seeing the youngster Denzel getting a chance to play games. So like I said, I think it boils down to certain factors that are happening behind the scenes, because I can only assume and believe that if you're not training properly, there's probably situations or things that happen at the club. I don't think the coach will want to start a player like that, but it does not mean that Sipho it can't make the Pirates lineup. Also, it's also playing for a club like Orlando Pirates. There's a lot of players. Remember, they got a big squad, right? And everybody, whenever they get their chance, they hit the mark, right? And Sipho is not, yes, he's creative, but he hasn't scored. I think that's also
Yeah, he
something
hasn't
that the
scored. In
coaches.
fact, Cheese, so that was a point of mine. He hasn't scored or he hasn't assisted. And at the end of the day, we know that Pirates is a club that is actually, I mean, very sort of data forward. Orlando Pirates, they look into numbers in terms of when it comes to their recruitment for a new manager, and I'm sure when it comes to recruitment for a player. So I think that behind the scenes, I mean, that could very well be a factor. Pirates are looking at his output, and right now, Sipho Mbule, after I think it's 12 games he's played, has not scored or assisted. So that is actually an interesting stat.
A concern. I'm also concerned about that, because I said the same thing about Tito, I think last season or even the beginning of the season, where I said, when you play as a 10, you spoke about Mshishi Tembazwane, and he's filled that role nicely at Bafana. But the difference now is that with a player like Mshishi, he gets assists, he scores the goals, and now you have a player like Tito. Tito can assist. He's probably had a couple assists already this season. So if you're talking about data, I think that's what's actually leaving Sipho out, because that's why when he brings him in, coach is looking for him to get in there, create a chance, score if he can, but when that does not happen, obviously when you sit down as the technical team, obviously we have options of players in that position, and obviously we're going to go for the best suited player to actually try and get an assist for us, try and score goals for us. I think that's a part of his game that he needs to improve. Yes, technically very good, solid, and maybe defensively as well. He's not up to where the coach wants him to be. So those factors, I think they stay with the coach to say, okay, I'd rather prefer Tito, who can create, who can score, who can also try and help Mark in terms of defending or the center midfield. But Sipho needs to work on that. I think this is just for Sipho to improve on that. And for sure, he'll probably start games if he starts scoring and he starts assisting.
Yeah, and let's just say this, Cheese. I mean, just for the audience, we love Sipho Mbule, of course. I mean,
Sure.
South Africa loves Sipho Mbule. We love watching him play. He's amazing. I mean, we can't wait to watch him at the AFCON next month. He's an amazing player, and no one would doubt his ability. I mean, when he has the ball at his feet, it's hard to argue that he's one of the best players in the country. But what you just said there was, if the club are looking at the numbers, he isn't producing those numbers just yet, and he's not contributing to goals. And actually, that is incredibly important. So you're basically saying, Cheese, that the reason he's not playing right now is because he's not contributing to goals. He's not actually contributing to that end product, which we know he can. He's got it in his locker. But what's interesting, Cheese, one thing that I found looking at all the numbers and stuff like that is that Sipho Mbule has created, so he's only created 3 chances in the league this season, right? But he's played only, Cheese, 194 minutes. So actually, when you look at that per 90, chance created per 90, that is actually not that bad. And when you compare it to the rest of the Pirates squad, I mean, so for example, Mofokeng, Tito, even Nduli, Apollos, Nemtajela, Machopa, Moremi, Hotto, they've all created more chances than Sipho Mbule. But Sipho Mbule's average is actually quite close to theirs based on how few minutes he has played. And then you spoke about Cheese, the maybe the lack of sort of defensive work that he will do. He's made only 4 tackles, but once again, he's only played 194 minutes. So his defensive output actually hasn't been that bad. But Cheese, I think at the end of the day, what we are talking about here is a supremely talented footballer who is playing for one of the biggest clubs in the country. I'm sure you'll say the biggest club in the country, Cheese.
For
One of
sure,
the
the
biggest clubs
biggest
in the
club,
country.
the biggest club in the country.
What? one of the biggest clubs in the country, and we want to see him out there on the field. We want to see him impacting games because we know that he has the ability to do that. And of course, we don't know if there are things going on behind the scenes. We're not going to speculate. We have no idea. But we know that he is a supremely talented player. It's just that I believe if we're seeing Mbule play this well for Bafana Bafana, we can see this in Mbule, for Orlando Pirates. So it is quite it's quite concerning, and especially Cheese, and this brings me to my next point, especially when we know that Sipho Mbule signed a 1-year deal at Pirates when he joined with a 2-year option. Now, as things stand, there's been no communication on whether that option will be taken. I think we would probably at this point say it will be. But Sipho really has to actually start thinking about his long-term future at Orlando Pirates, and thinking about the effort that is going to be required to make a sort of consistent run in that first team, like he is with Bafana Bafana. Because, and I was chatting to Peter about this, it's quite easy to gear yourself up when the stakes are incredibly high. And when it comes to Bafana Bafana, the stakes are very high. Sipho Mbule does not need to motivate himself, because he wants to go to the AFCON. He wants to go to the World Cup. But maybe with the day-to-day of Pirates, it's slightly different. You're with the same players every day. You're in the same kind of environment every day. You don't have those same day-to-day motivations. Cheese, is that, what I'm saying there, does that make sense? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it makes sense because like you said, a very talented player. I mean, you just gave stats there in terms of the minutes that he has played, and it should be a worry for him as well as it is a worry for the club with the 1-year contract. I mean, that's he was basically on survival mode, and Pirates gave him that opportunity to revive himself, and if I was in that position, I'll be working tirelessly to try and make sure that I do very well. I score goals, I create, I help the team defensively, and make sure that my behavior is also okay off the field and around my teammates. And that's very key because what's going to happen to Sipo if the club does not renew? Of course, we all want the club to give him more time, because yes, we said Sipo fitted in like a glove, because he's exceptional, but he needs also a bit of time, But personally, for him, he should be looking at actually working really harder. This is not bashing Sipo. This is not saying Sipo is a
No,
bad
of
player,
course not.
but a concern for us as well, because we know what he can do and we want him to do even more and even better. Hence we're raising this curtain, talking about his stats and his contribution to the club. And it's gonna be sad if the club does not really think about, okay, let's give him another 2 years or 3 years. This is a test season for him, and you have to put the numbers in there because football has changed. It's now into the data. It's all about that, and if you don't get the right numbers, the analysts are going to go and find another replacement for you, So I hope the message gets to Sipo, and he can start working on those kind of things that we spoke about. And also with the fans out there, yes, they love him. He's a superb player. But I think he would be far, far better if he starts delivering what we spoke about in terms of scoring and creating the chances, If he can do that, Kurt, I'm telling you, Pirates will also, take it another level up. I mean, how can a left back have more assists than a number 10? That's just something, that's of concern. So yeah, we can only wish him the best and hope that he gets the message from SoccerBeat, because this is what we do, Kurt. We let the beat do the talking.
And Cheesy, just one other thing there. So just on his position, just very quickly, I think that at the start of the season he was playing almost in like a two-man midfield with Tito in front of him, or sometimes even Mofokeng or Polis. And then after he played against Nigeria for Bafana Bafana, 4 days later is the MTN8 final. Sipho Mbule starts at 10 for Pirates. And it was because of how well he played against Nigeria, I'm sure. And it looked like the coach almost took inspiration or a leaf out of Hugo Bruce's book there. Um, does Sipho Mbule have a future at Pirates in that number 10 position, or is it is it in midfield? And if it is in midfield, Cheese, is it not that the coach maybe sees that as quite a risk, considering the lack of defensive work that Sipho Mbule is going to do if you compare him to someone like Mbata or Nduli?
You are right with what you just said. I prefer him at Pirates. With the two-man midfield. Sipo is those type of players who needs a workhorse in terms of right next to him. If you remember his combination with Tebza, and that's why he excels at Bafana, because you've got a Obas that's able to, to cover those spaces, a Mokoena to cover those spaces, and let him be free. I think at Pirates, if he gets more of a free role that Tito gets, Tito is like he's allowed to go to the side, he can go into that midfield, collect the ball. I need Sipho to also start doing that. But with the coach, I think he enjoys him better as he plays as a two-man midfield than a 10. Remember, Pirates are very quick wingers, and Sipho is not that quick. So you need somebody that's always like an Nemtajela who's always going to get into that box, and you hardly see that from Sipho. So at Pirates, I'd prefer him to play as a two-man midfield. If he's in the two-man midfield, he looks okay. In that 10 position at Pirates, I think it's going to take him a bit of time for him to actually get and catch up to speed in terms of what the coach wants. I mean, you have Amoremi, he runs faster than a cheetah. You have Apollos, who's as quick as... So by the time Apollos is done with his taking on his man, he looks into the box. Where's your 10? Your 10 is not even on the edge of the box, is not even in the box. So his box entries as well need to improve.
Yeah, fair enough, Cheesy. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think Sipho Mbule, I mean, again, I just want to stress this. We think he's a phenomenal player. We know that Cheese is a massive fan. We know that Monip's a massive fan. We all know that he's a major talent. But right now, at least in the league at Pirates, it doesn't seem to be working for Sipho Mbule, and we hope to see him in there. We know that Pirates has a wealth of quality, so we're not doubting the strength of that team. And again, we want to stress that this isn't a problem for Orlando Pirates. They are playing really, really well. They're in a good position. They've won 6 out of their last 7, and they could make a real push for the title. So this isn't to point holes or to point fingers at Ouaddou. We understand that he's doing what's best for his team right now. What we are trying to assess is what can Sipho Mbule do to get into that Pirates team, to force his way into that team, because of his qualities and because of the fact that he's made himself a regular for Bafana. But Cheesy, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you to the audience. Guys, please remember to like, subscribe, like this video. It really helps us with the algorithm. We'd really appreciate the love. Cheesy, thank you very much.
Appreciate you, Kurt. One love. Thank you.
Cheers, Cheesy.